Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me to address you on this beautiful occasion. May I present the CSArts-SGV Class of 2020 asterisk. Before we go down and see what that asterisk is all about, I want to say to both of you, the graduates and the parents, congratulations. You can fight it out over who had the tougher job for the last 12 years, but you're all done now, and you have permission to lie flat on your backs and eat ice cream and not exercise for a full 3 months. I want the entire CSArts 2020 asterisk family to gain a total of 14,000 pounds by Christmas. Now, let's jump down and see that asterisk. Let's see, the class of 2020, there it is, yes. Oh, it appears to be a vaudeville joke. After lots of tests, a guy goes to his doctor and he says, "Doc, give it to me straight." And the doctor says, "All right, what do you want first? You want the good news or the bad news?" And the guy says, "I don't know, you choose." And the doctor says, "Actually, I can tell you both at the same time. They're going to name a disease after you." Which is to say that your class is unique in human history. The entire class of 2020, the whole world over, will for posterity be famous as the only one in which not a single student showed up for their own graduation. Let's face it, as Miss Kim in the CSArts math department wrote to her students, it has not ended as intended. Just moments before you finished your entire primary education, the boat took on water and you were left dog paddling 7 feet from the dock. Well, I'm here to tell you that this is not the last time that the world will present itself to you as a baffling chaos, a jarring course correction with far-reaching consequences. The world does this trick all the time. It's very proud of itself. The good news for you is that you are artists, or at least each of you now has some training in understanding the world like one. And artists, like you, actually thrive in times of outright confusion. The high point of ancient Greek tragedy coincides exactly with the great Athenian plague of 430 BC. The Black Death killed pretty much everybody in Florence in 1348, and at that very same moment, in the very same city, the Italian Renaissance was born. Athens and Florence have something in common with other cities that started artistic revolutions like London, Venice, New York, Liverpool, Havana, New Orleans. These are all crossroads, port cities, melting pots. Now, unfortunately, where cross-cultural intermingling is rampant, so indeed is contagion and disease. So for exactly the same reason, these are both the most unhealthy cities and the most creative cities in world history. In fact, musicologists have discovered that the most accurate way of tracking artistic innovations across the globe is with epidemiological models. Talk about going viral. Art is indeed a kind of virus, an extraordinarily beneficial one, and it is naturally and spontaneously created when you get within 6 feet of an outsider and you both take your masks off. Now, please, for God's sakes, don't do it right now. I'm just saying. Shakespeare's greatest plays were written amidst recurring and crippling plagues in England. In 1603, every theater was shut down and fully 1/5 of the London population died. What was the playwright's response? Well, and as you like it, the banished Duke, also in a rigidly enforced social isolation, experiences a kind of surprising personal renewal and finds that sweet are the uses of adversity. Shakespeare himself, in quarantine, sat down and wrote King Lear, and I know all of you have done so as well. My point about you in this pandemic is that this is not an interruption in your life. It actually is your life. Those who lived through the Napoleonic Wars or the Great Chicago Fire or the AIDS crisis were not interrupted, but rather defined by these events. They carry it with them as part of their character. This pandemic is happening in 2020, your class, not any other year, and I'm saying go ahead and own it. React to it, let it affect you, and then record your findings in your artworks. When you're done, give them to us. Help us to understand. As young artists, that really is your job now. Your job is of vital importance to maintain our culture and our humanity. That's how it works. The Shakespeare scholar James Shapiro makes a very beautiful point that the playwright never fled London. He stayed in the city because he understood that his job as an artist was to help people emerge from their grief and danger and disappointment to readjust to life, and he'd be damned if they weren't going to use his newly opened theater to do it. Okay. Enough about the pandemic. I really didn't want to talk about it at all, but like you, I am on the horns of circumstance. But you deserve a normal keynote address like every other normal graduating high schooler, so let's all pretend to be normal, which has never gone well for kids in an art school. Okay, This is a, quote, commencement address, so as the speechifiers will tell you, it is not the ending of something, namely your school days, but the beginning of something, namely your adulthood, your independence. Sprung from the nest, you are free to broaden your experiences on your own time, engage in experiments on your own dime, make your mistakes with your own crimes, and find joy with your own sublime. I think that's how this speech is supposed to go. But if I use the other word, the graduation word, well, that means that you are attaining a higher level, moving up toward the adulthood level and stepping away from the childhood level. Hello, unbounded, goodbye, being grounded. But here I'm going to intervene and address you as young artists again. For God's sakes, don't do it. Do not graduate from high school. Don't do this one. The other graduations in your life, college, marriage, promotion, go ahead, knock yourselves out. But under no circumstances are you to do the graduation in which you dress up like an adult and you discard your childhood. It is exceedingly difficult to get your childhood back, and you are definitely going to need it. In fact, I believe you will need only two things to go forward in your life as an artist, and they both need a lot of practice. First, the physical and organizational skills that you've learned right here in your CS Arts conservatories. Paintbrush, toe shoe, light rack, your memory, makeup, people skills, your alarm clock. All these things are necessary to enact what we call the, to coin a phrase, the work of art. The other thing you will need to turn the work of art into a work of art is, and this is the tricky part, a method, a very personal one, by which you first gather raw material from your life and then simply note your honest response to it. Sounds easy. It is not easy. And the more adult you become, the more you graduate, the harder it gets. Every artist I know spends most of her day laboring to absorb and feel, then react and create in exactly the way she did when she was a child. Picasso himself famously remarked that the biggest challenge for the artist is how to remain a child. Or as he puts it, it takes a very long time to become young, especially if you stop practicing, which most people do around 12 years old. And be warned, from now on, there will be a lot of pressure for you to grow up, to make something of yourself, put yourself together, stop being a child. And I'm here to tell you to thank them very nicely and don't do it. Don't do any of it. Why? Because a child, every child, is the platonic ideal of the artist. Childhood is the first leg for the artist, and it is the final destination. And here's just a few things that artists struggle to do that children do without even thinking. First, they respond to any stimulus immediately, simply, and naturally. While they are creating, they concern themselves with neither the past nor the future. For a child, it is only ever right now. They are perpetually asking, what is that? Their first interest in an object is as it appears directly to the sight, sound, and touch. A child will often show you what they can do the very moment you stop giving them things. Children are never clever. They are only obvious. For a child in the creative act, there is no left, no right, no rich, no poor, and actually no right and no wrong. And they lie quite easily and very naturally. Indeed, as Diderot said, every child is essentially criminal. Now, why do I want you all to be criminals? Well, for one, art is naturally in conflict with the society in which it coexists. It expresses, like a child, the simple truth about what it's actually seeing right in front of it, whether what it sees hinders the goals of society or not. And to make any a work of art, you must be very comfortable with artifice, or to use another word, lying. As the filmmaker Jean-Luc Godard observed, in film, every cut is a lie. To which Picasso answers, of course, art is just a lie that tells the truth. Listen to any child's lie, and I guarantee you, you'll find a refreshing truth in it. As a toddler, my son once said, I saw a big ogre in that man's head. That was a bald-faced lie, and it could not have been truer. So don't grow up. Don't even try. For one thing, you may have noticed, it makes for some seriously bad dancing. Now, on to the high school graduation speech. In most states, the driving age is about 16. In 1975, the Avis Car Rental Company had their actuaries do some research regarding damage to their cars, and the actuaries came back with a graph, and they told Avis, don't rent cars to people under 25, they're going to wreck them. The only exception they found was the 114 seniors in the CS Arts class of 2020 asterisks who were uniformly excellent drivers. About 20 years later, 20 years, mind you, Neurobiologists at Penn State were studying brain growth, and they made a graph that seemed to have been stolen from the Avis file cabinets. It was indeed the same graph exactly, but the y-axis wasn't car wrecks. It was brain growth. Turns out the brain is not finished growing at 16 when we can drive, nor at 18 when we can vote, nor at 21 when we can drink, but at 25 when we can finally rent a car. Now, I don't bring this up to slap your wrists and tell you to drive better. I bring it up because this story relates to your lives in a more profound way. Something here got turned upside down. Science generally leads business. Penn State does the brain research first, and then Avis makes money with its findings. Here, Avis beat science to the punch, and nobody was more surprised than Avis. Cut to me on an airplane a few years ago, striking up a conversation with my seatmate. After we exchanged professions, actor and marriage counselor, I was working to extract some free advice from her, disguised as conversation. But instead, she went totally wide-eyed when I mentioned a few basics about the creative process, and in particular, the guidelines for better improvisation. She sort of slammed her ginger ale down and started grilling me, saying that all day she pours through reams and reams of medical studies and research findings that labor for years and years to achieve the exact same results that even the silliest improv game does in 2 minutes. In fact, you'd be surprised at just how many things you CS Artsers already know that lots of professions are desperately trying to figure out. Musicologist Ted Gioia notes that scientists have recently discovered that choral singing releases rivers of oxytocin in the brain, which not only brings on feelings of euphoria, but also greatly improves productivity and collaboration. The business community is fascinated by this. Well, they should have just driven out the 210 and asked you. They could have skipped their boring grant proposals and had a really good time harmonizing with the Vocal Arts Conservatory. The headline? What our culture is now learning is that they are mostly learning now from the arts. That nobody can think productively on factual knowledge alone. And we artists don't use facts at all. We don't even know what to do with them. Lo and behold, every industry in America is filling hotel ballrooms with employees taking courses in creativity and communal collaboration, empathy training, mindfulness, interpersonal skills, in order to become more productive. Artists have been doing nothing but those things since the cave paintings, and now all of a sudden, technology, industry, and politics are scrambling to literally incorporate what we do, rather than ban, ostracize, and starve us for it, which has usually been the first reaction to a bold artistic gesture. The next reaction, of course, is to take credit for it themselves, remove whatever is interesting, and sell it back to us for a profit. Shockingly, those artists' tools that I just listed are now the first things to be slashed from education curriculums. And this is at the very moment that employers are demanding them the most. And look at you. So smart. Graduating with really solid training in the creative method and collaborative execution. Let me tell you a secret. These slashers of arts programs, listen to me. They're jealous. I'm not kidding. You can do it and they can't. Why is it so easy for you and not for them? Because at their best, they are only ever restating reality, the very same reality that you just finished creating. Okay, here's the advice part of the commencement address. There is no vice so bad as advice, but I think the marriage counselor would want me to remind you of the 3 basic rules of improv, which is to say, of life. Improv rule number 1, say the first thing that comes into your head. Non-artists are ruled by their fears, and artists are enlivened by them. The thing you fear, of course, is yourself. You think that you're about to say something stupid, and you really need to say something original. But you already are original. What, are there a whole bunch of yous walking around that you have to distinguish yourself from? Where? Show me. Don't be original, because it's redundant. Whatever it is, say it. A child would, and so should you. Improv rule number 2, this is the one that everyone knows, say yes and, which is to say accept what you're given because you cannot control that. And once you accept it, make something with it. But wait, there's more. Whatever you make is not for you, it's for someone else. So you must give that away as a gift. There are tribal cultures in which it is taboo to keep any gift, and they're absolutely right. And when you do pass it on, you save yourself a lot of trouble and adorn it with yes things, positive things that push forward, because negative ones will eventually sit down like a stubborn donkey and stop the whole circle of gift-giving cold. Accept, create, then give. You hear that? Accept, create, then give. You give a child a carrot, she makes it into an airplane, and then she shows you how it flies. Try it with your scene partner, your boss, and your friend, and you'll get applause, promotion, and a hug. Improv rule number 3. The marriage counselor loved this one. Make your partner look good. Everything you do must demonstrate that your partner is the world's leading expert on rules 1 and 2. An experienced actor will tell you that rule 3 is paradoxically the most selfish one, because he knows that the better his partner looks, the better he looks. Art is not a zero-sum game, and neither is your life. You want to succeed? Help the person right next to you succeed. The shortcut is this. You must never hear your partner. You may only listen. In fact, listening is pretty much the whole ball game out there, both on stage and off. You master that, there's nowhere it can't take you. To close, here's what's in store for you. As a citizen, you will have good times and you will have bad times. As an artist, you will have neither. You will only have times. Your job, like a mall cop, is to observe and report. The minute you make arrests or devise punishments, you are a mere policeman or a legislator or a critic. Noble professions all, but they're not natural states for the artist. Because the things you make, all the drawings, the dances, the sets you design, the sculptures, the songs you sing, the characters you become, have only one thing in common. They are all distinguished and will be judged, not by the conclusions they draw, but by the questions they ask. The surrealist Tristan Tzara said that any art that can be understood is mere journalism. If Leonardo had told us why she's smiling, or even if she was smiling, history would have said, nice painting, swipe left. Your medium is not the period, it's the question mark. What's that? How does it work? What's behind that? Can I have it? You may recognize these simple questions as the things children ask when they find something new. And while they're asking it, they don't wait for an answer. They just start to touch it, to taste it, to smell it. Then they try to use it as something else, and then they stick it up their nose. The choreographer Agnes DeMille said that living is just a form of not being sure, not knowing what's next, and art is a form of expressing it. She also warned that if you don't express your creativity, what's inside you, it will never occur again in nature. So basically, you're it. I'll expand on Miss DeMille and say, tag you're it. I've been an artist my whole life, and I couldn't be happier to hand it off to you. It's a wild ride, and it rarely looks like stardom, and that's even if you should be so lucky to become a star. Thankfully, you don't need to be a star to delight and astonish us. And when the next chaos rolls through and the sky falls, and it always does, try, like Shakespeare, to stay in town, to stay at it, because we're going to be looking for you to tell us who we are. Congratulations.